We're now in INDEX02 of cars and parts, and the difference we can see here is when we have our type car, we can actually pass in extra parameters or variables here for brand, whether to turn it into an uppercase, for example, and here it says upper as boolean and it returns a string. It's not mandatory. Let's make it mandatory by putting that in here. Let's save that, and we can see that when we come down to the brand, that if that variable exists, we can then set it to uppercase, otherwise it's put to lowercase. So if we come here into the thing and let's just get the query, which is here, and there we see the brand is set to uppercase, and if it's false, comes back like this. And what we can also do in these variables is we can also set a default. So boolean here, we can set it equal to true by default. It doesn't need to be it returns a string. This doesn't need to be set as required because it will have a default. So if we save that, come back, and basically we don't pass in anything. Refresh the page, refresh the GraphQL playground, do that. It comes back by default there. But if we put this in here as upper false and refresh and run it again, we can see it is into lowercase. And one thing, in case we didn't see it before, we have our queries by type, cars by type. So let's have a quick look at that. Let's do query space cars by type, and we can see straight away looking for a car type, so we can put it there, and it has to be one of our enums, and it has to be, if we look at our enums up top here, it has to be, for example, one of them, not in a string but is this, because this is an actual type. And so we can do this and get actually say the ID and the type of car, and if we refresh and if we send the query back, did not want 5 field queries by type. See what this gives us. Expected car types found estate. Did you mean the enum value estate? So therefore it is looking for this type here. It's looking for an enum. Expected iterable, but did not want 5 for query cars by type. Expected an iterable. So let's have a look and see what that is. Let's do this. And if we go back into the query, it could well be that the query is not giving us back what we want. Cars by type, actually expecting an iterable. So let's make it an array. Refresh. And run that back. It obviously needs some fields now. And let's do type. Cars by type, that's empty because that's not being resolved. So that's why it works down here. This was the same in INDEX01. We actually had the right definition here. When we had cars by type, we had this here. So let's put this here and copy this into this one here. We obviously didn't update INDEX02. So cars by type. Refresh, see what happens. Unexpected identifier, return cars by type. Copied something wrong. Let's go back into INDEX01. This is in the query, INDEX02. Into the query, cars by type. Unexpected type, colon, that's going to be that. Check that, and a comma. It's looking better. There we are. Refresh. there we get it in a state, and see how we have to pass the enum like this. So we can type in brand, and that's what we get there. So let's prettify it, ID type brand doors, and there we go. So that's how we can get it. The INDEX02 is now updated. Cars by type, it's actually expecting to get an iterable of cars, and what we do here, that's cars by type, and that is filtered. So let's put that here. Refresh. And that'll filter based on the type. And we just get the only one estate. So if we come back and copy this, and this is what we should have had in INDEX01. That's correct there, so we had the correct type. So that's how we can use our enums. It filters on the arguments, it gets the argument type, which we've logged out here, type estate, and it filters the cars up top using the type, filtering it on the type equals the type specified. So what we've seen is here is how to send different variables through, and of course if we come in here and say upper again dot true, send that through. While we're getting that back down here, let's go back into our INDEX02 and let's change this back in the schema. Let's leave it as having to be specified. Let's make it false by default. So if we come in here and refresh and we don't specify anything, it comes back. Let's just check that that's been saved. Let's check that this has been saved. So oh, it's coming back. It's been saved as an icon. That's boolean equals false. Wait for the changes to take place. Should be ready. There we go, the brand's lowercase, and if we now set the upper to true, we can basically see that it gets taken. So there we go, we can see how we can add variables in with each of our queries, because these are all just functions, how we can pass our enums in as well. So that's the end of cars and parts.